Alright fellas, we need to talk about KSI. Now normally I avoid talking about most of the influence of boxing sort of space, but KSI was meant to face off against Dillon Danis next week, but apparently has a case of the sniffles now and is withdrawn from the fight. This happens a lot, even the most high profile genuine fights, but cancelling or postponing a fight over a week out against a bloke who doesn't seem to be anything but a human punching bag isn't a great look, especially when you're claiming to have been horrifically sick for the last 3 weeks, but you were running around a pitch happily enough only a couple weeks ago. So stay with me as we break all of this down. Is this a case of the sniffles, or could there be something deeper to all this? Now KSI is of course the most popular name on Misfits, and one of the two most in the influence of boxing space. One of the originators of the scene, and the numbers speak for themselves when he fights. There's a reason even the Saudis want to get him on board. Basically, he's a cheat code to easy viewership. People will eat up whatever comes next for him, and in the influence of boxing space, the fans have all wanted to see the big fights happen. Now, I don't mind these big influence of boxing fights. The whole Prime card was pretty hype, and it fulfilled on its aim to be an entertainment product rather than a serious bout. I'm not an absolute boxing snob. But then there has been bouts, say against Joe Fournier, where you're left scratching your head saying, why is this even happening? And yeah, they say, oh well, he needs a warm-up. Yet after a few warm-ups already, truthfully those sorts of bouts are just there to fulfill pay-per-view obligations. When I say that, I'm referencing to their 5-year deal where they're contractually obliged to hold 6 events a year, with 2 of them being pay-per-view. Even though Misfits might claim to have other pay-per-view stars, KSI really is their only one. I don't think anyone was too keen on Danny Aaron's versus Danny Simpson, and I think that's probably why Aaron's didn't blossom into the pay-per-view star they thought he was going to be. So then, as KSI is the only pay-per-view star, you have to put him into these situations where he has to fulfill quotas. The most blatant example of this was KSI versus Slim and AT, which was organised after the Tommy bout. KSI didn't want to fight this, plain and simple. He had no interest, and the rumour is that's exactly why it never happened. If that's true or not, I don't know. But it was simply a fight which KSI didn't want to be in, and frankly, it didn't make too much sense overall. Why would KSI step down to the level of Slim after the biggest fight of his life? And then a bit of common sense prevailed, and that fight didn't happen. Fast forward to now, KSI hasn't fought in over a year, and they start looking for opponents. Who do they try to fight the self-acclaimed best boxer in the scene? Well, first they go to Cowboy. Not horrendous, he was a kickboxer, but he says no. So then their second choice was Tony Ferguson. Like the bloke hasn't had enough damage, yeah, let's throw him into a sport where he has little to no chance to succeed and get KSI to knock him out. I reckon they'll get all the fans hyped for KSI. No, that's just a horrendous PR move, and I still don't understand why they were bragging about having this bout potentially being made after it fell through. So that didn't happen either. Tony signed with the JFL, and instead they went with a great option in Wayne Bridge. In what was one of the most embarrassing fight reveals I've ever seen, they walked out an old man trying to make fun of Jake Paul's recent opponent choices, which, you know, fair enough, only to walk out a 44-year-old retired football player, who genuinely seems like a great bloke, all for KSI to mock him and it go down like an absolute lead balloon. Then they seem to look at the table and go, wait a second, that went really, really bad. Hey, let's go past this, let's go to the most hated, let's go to Dillon Danis. Now Danis is as far away from any resemblance of a genuine challenge you can get. It would be a miracle if he threw more than a couple punches around. What he does bring though is entertainment. Something that the scene forgot so long ago. He carried the Prime card on his back, and love or hate him, he knows how to get eyes. Although everyone knew the fight itself was going to be somewhat pathetic, hey, I was excited for it. To me, this is what influencer boxing is. 2 guys chatting absolute BS and then getting in the ring. That's fantastic, rather than all this fake WWE sort of forced promotion. So I was a bit upset to see this all postponed. Will a new date come out? I got no clue. But Danis does have an MMA fight against Ferguson in the G League coming up in a few months. So really, they can't easily reorganize it. Do I think KSI is scared of Danis? No. If this fight doesn't actually happen though, there'll be a lot of question marks. This is now the second time KSI has pulled out of a fight. And this is pretty embarrassing from a bloke who slated others so hard, getting his audience to go after them when they had genuine injuries, all for him to pull out against the human punching bag with a runny nose. Hopefully they find a new date, but to go back to what I was saying before, KSI didn't seem too interested in this fight as a whole. As a fighter, it's hard to get hyped for a fight against a legit punching bag. This isn't a challenge like the Tommy fight was. The motivation isn't the same. Is he probably ill? Yeah. But it's pretty easy to see how everyone is all a bit skeptical about the true full reasons for him pulling out. And it's not even like he's going to push through all of this to take the fight so his mates can eat on the bouts on the undercard. None of his mates are on it. Look at the undercard. None of these fights have any relevance to the casual fan. No more Deji, we got Roman Fury and Harley Ben instead. The only people who genuinely care about these bouts are the fans who are invested in the Misfits universe, a small but very loud minority. But I reckon this is all a part of the greater Misfits plan. Now let me sit you down and tell you a story. Unlike a lot of you, I've seen the Misfits story before. I'm from Australia, where a promotional company called No Limit exists. The sole purpose of this promotion originally was, hey, there's a few huge names in rugby, let's form a promotion and put on these big gimmick exhibition bouts. And alike to a lot of the big influencer fights, these events were hugely successful, and they built this promotion off the backs of, say, Paul Gallen, who could sell huge pay-per-views in the Aussie market. Kinda like KSI. And as times went on, things got more and more serious, with, say, Gallen stepping up in the level of his opposition, where he was even fighting for Australian titles. Yet after the first few events, they realised they couldn't just fill the card with rugby or footy fighters anymore. Nobody really cared about any of the other bouts, they only cared about the few big names, and the cost of these smaller bouts just didn't make sense. So they started to invest in younger talent on the undercards, genuine boxing talent, with these cards seeing the rise of the likes of Goodman, Liam Wilson, and their biggest success, the Zoos. They transitioned from an influencer boxing company to a legit promotion by putting legit talent on the undercards of these major influencer sort of events. And that's why I think we're starting to see the Misfits events we're seeing now. They see the road path out, they see a brighter light, and that's why we're seeing less influencers and more MF pros. A genuine boxing promotion is where the long-term money lies, but for the moment, KSI still has to head these events. Misfits is changing, is trying to become a more sustainable model, and I'm not certain KSI is really keen to carry all the weight. And that's why I think you've seen events fall through which KSI truly doesn't have the motivation for. There is also the potential factor that KSI has a bigger fight lined up and he has to drop a ton of weight to make it happen. The Saudis apparently wanted KSI versus McGregor, which would be at a lower weight. So who knows, that could be all a surprise factor also. Either way, I hope to see this bout rescheduled, because the Danis trash talk is certainly entertaining. But is this a case of genuine sickness, or is it a bunch of other motivating factors? I'll let you decide in the comments. I want to hear all your opinions. But if you did enjoy this video, please consider liking and subscribing. It does a ton to help the channel. But thanks for watching, fellas. I'll catch you in the next one.